So I wanted to pitch my own idea on how I would do a Mask movie. Then I thought about the fact that there are a whole group of people who have never heard of or thought about Mask. So I said, you know what? I should do a review of the 80s cartoon. And then I said, you know what? I should do both. I should pitch my own idea and do it. So we're at a double up. We're going to today do both a review and a pitch. And welcome back to the heart of the stories we tell. A series where I spend way too much time thinking about what makes a story. And today's episode starts with a review of the 80s cartoon Mask, Mobile Armored Strike Command. For those of you that don't know it, it was basically just a 30-minute ad every week for toys. There were some pretty good concepts in there. Not all of them are ones I would say I love. Overall, my nostalgia goggles are going to let me keep this at silver. If you yourself don't have nostalgia for the 80s and the cartoon, it's probably going to be closer to a copper. But either way, there's a lot you can mine from this. There be gold in them there hills, or at least that there story, or at least there can be, once you take out some of the 80s. Being primarily a toy line based on vehicles, I'm going to start with those guys that come with the vehicles, specifically the characters of Mask. The opening song tells you right away where we start, because Tracker's going to lead the mission, specifically Matthew Tracker. Matt was a millionaire and a philanthropist, and I have no idea how he made his money. I have no idea what happened to his wife, the mother of his son. All I know is that he is one of 3 people who helped create the mask that got no real origin story. Him and Miles were at one point some sort of friends or business partner, and then they split ways when the masks got split in half. Every episode would begin with something going wrong, and Matt telling the computer to assemble the mask agents that were best suited for this mission. He was also known for having a son, Scott, who was the kid of the episode, and I'm going to talk about him a lot more in the actual pitch portion of this, and his AI scooter trash can robot R2-D2 thing called T-Bob. Over the course of the episodes, Tracker had quite a few different masks, the most famous being the Spectrum, which gave him supervision. He also had the Ultra Flash, the Lava Shot mask, and the Shroud mask. Up next is Alex Sector. Alex is totally the scientist. He had the brains and the brawn, and he had a weird mask called the Jackrabbit that let him jump really high. But he was also the co-pilot of my favorite vehicle, the Rhino. Bruce's mask had the lifter beam, basically telekinesis. Even though they both piloted Rhino, Bruce was in 40 of the original 65 episodes, where Alex Sector was only in 35 of them. The only people who were in all 65 on the Mask team were Matt and his son, Scott, and T-Bob. I guess points should be given that she was never romantically attached to anyone, but her character is paper thin at best. Gloria Baker has almost no origin story, no information about her. She's pretty much just the chick of the team. And her vehicle, the Shark, is almost impossible to find, and some people say it was never even produced as a toy. Her mask was one of those ones with a lot of potential. The aura absorbed and changed kinetic energy. Just think about what someone with any scientific background could do with something like that. As bad off as she gets, Buddy Hawk ends up being just the mechanic. He spends half his time as the co-pilot of a vehicle, and the rest of it is at the gas station. Probably the least professional job any of them have. I know people say he was a disguise artist, but for some reason I remember there being some part of backstory, maybe it was from the comics, where he was an out-of-work actor. He also has one of those really potential masks, the Penetrator, and when he activates it, it allows him to temporarily pass through objects. And who is he co-pilot to? None other than my favorite teacher, Hondo McLean. It seemed like whenever he was called into action, he was always teaching history, and as such had to leave his class alone. He has the distinction of being one of the first people to have multiple vehicles other than Matt himself, and obviously notwithstanding the racing sub-series. He uses the blaster mask, which fires a destructive energy beam. Yeah, that's pretty generic. And then comes Dusty Hayes, another favorite vehicle of mine, with the Gator, Jeep that shot out a boat. I think that was actually the first toy I had of these. He was known as a stunt driver, and his Jeep had the most obvious weapon on it, which he called something ridiculous. I think it was the electric owie or something. His mask, the Backlash, fired a kinetic blast, starting to notice a pattern when they ran out of cool original ways to use those masks. And then comes Brad Turner. He's a motorcyclist, rock musician, and in general supposed to be the bad boy, or at least as close to a bad boy as 80s cartoons allowed you to get. His vehicle was the Condor, a motorcycle that could turn into a helicopter. It had a really cool function in the first episode that allowed it to go faster than any land speed record as long as it went in a straight line. Weapon of choice on it was known as an antimatter gun, and I promise you, whoever wrote that had no idea what antimatter was. It seemed to just have different magical properties every week. Brad was a kind of cool character and another figure I enjoyed playing with. His mask was the one that created illusions. Often he'd use it to create illusions of other vehicles or his vehicle to double up and make it so people couldn't target him. One of the last mask agents to come into the series had both the coolest vehicle and the absolute coolest mask. Calhoun Burns, pilot of the Raven, a Corvette that turned into both a seaplane and a submarine, and the Gulliver mask that allowed him to enlarge or shrink objects. This was such a plot device, I am very sure that that's why he barely appeared in any episodes, because that mask has such amazing potential and so many things it could do. But let's talk about the story structure for a moment. Every episode was a self-contained 30 minutes long, which in TV land actually means closer to 22 minutes. So in reality, they had about 6 minutes per act, give or take. Act 1 is almost always something bad happens. Venom did something. Matt and his team are almost immediately on the scene or recruited to go to the scene. He plops down his computer and says, "Assemble the Mobile Armored Strike Command," and boom, the heroes go out. Act 2, the heroes try to face off against Venom. Venom gives them a hard time. Act 3, cleanup, is the heroes save the day. Seems pretty cut and dry. And to be honest, that's the only real problem with the series. It's made for kids. It had to be short and sweet because they only had 22 minutes. Inside there's a lot of cool action set pieces. There's a lot of vehicle transformation. There's a lot of lasers. To be honest, there's a lot of there should be more damage done than there is. But, again, 80s cartoon. Inside this, though, they kept it interesting because Venom wasn't just a stereotypical bad guy. They actually had relatively normal thought processes, and none of them were carrying the idiot ball most times. Most of what they were after was some form of money or power. In fact, Raiders of the Lost Ark style, there were several times where they were after things like the City of Gold of El Dorado or something like that Mask had to race them towards. Several episodes focused quasi-magical weapons that Venom was either trying to obtain to sell or to use, and as such we have things like magic arrowheads or rocks that can heal or give cancer. There was always also a B-plot that had something going on with Matt's son. The most emotion you'll ever get out of Matt Tracker in these cartoons was when his son's in danger, which happened on a somewhat regular basis. Every episode also had a minor point where it would show what all the Mask members were doing in their everyday lives when their signal watch would go off, alerting them that Matt Tracker needed them. Now, primarily all this information is the first season, the first 65 episodes. However, they did have a 10-episode season 2, where they were basically changed into being a race team. It was kind of weird. They were still facing off against Venom and trying to save the day, and there was still some villainy involved, but it was always done with the pretense of there being a race involved. Matt Tracker didn't even appear in all of these episodes. However, like most 80s cartoons, all of this comes from the toy line. So let's talk about the toys for a minute. So the Mask toy line was smaller than G.I. Joe, and that's good, because since primarily they all came with vehicles, they would have been way too expensive had we done them to that scale. In fact, there's part of me that thinks that the toy line was born when someone said, "I like the idea of Transformers and G.I. Joe. Can we put G.I. Joes in the Transformers? Or maybe, you know what, we should make them more James Bond-esque." And the Mask idea came pretty much from that. At least that would be my gut feeling, because that's what these were. They were transforming vehicles that had hidden secrets within each one. Instead of more than meets the eye, it was illusion is the best weapon. In preparation for the fact that they are talking about doing this as a whole cinematic universe G.I. Joe, Micronauts, Mask, they did release a Matt Tracker Advanced Vehicle Specialist for the G.I. Joe line. I believe this is fairly recent. And that brings me to my pitch, because now we want to talk about this movie they want to do. Paramilitary organization? Check. Spy-like maneuvers? Check. Cool vehicle transformations? Check. This has everything to be a summer blockbuster. But before I get to where my movie would start, I want to talk about the origins of the Mask, because I think that is something that should have been touched on right away. If you picked up the comic books, or specifically the original little ones that came with the toys, you know there's a little bit of backstory. Find out that another tracker, Matthew's brother, helped create the masks along with Matthew and Miles Mayhem. Something happened, one of the trackers died, Matt's brother. Mayhem took off with half the masks, but no ability to reproduce them. And then the war between Mask and Venom started. However, there's a lot of blank spaces in there if you notice. So for my pitch for the movie, first of all, I want to touch on themes of family and betrayal, and as such I'm starting with Matthew and Miles, but specifically I'm going to start with Miles. Because in order to have a good story, we need to have a good villain. So I want to talk about Miles' money. Specifically, I'm picturing that his family was new money when new money and old money mattered, back in the 20s. His great-grandfather or grandfather did something like build cars or boats or something like that, something transportation-oriented, just to keep us in theme. Then, in the aftermath of World War II, because, of course, all of their production went into war stuff during World War II, they stayed in war stuff. So maybe they were making planes or tanks or maybe boats or submarines, I don't know. Something war-footing, though. Then, from there, Miles' father wanted to increase the pull of the family, kind of like the Kennedys, get them into politics. But his two sons, Miles and Maxie, that's right, don't forget Miles has a younger brother, wanted nothing to do with this. Maxie was one of those spoiled rich kids that just wanted to go and have fun and ended up becoming a race car driver. Miles, on the other hand, still wanted to do family business, but he thought the way of the future was the computer and the microchip. Miles had his own little love story where he fell in love with a flower child, married her, and they had a daughter. And this is where things start to go wrong. Because Miles loves his daughter, and his daughter is much more like his wife, preaching peace and love, not war. However, at some point in the not-too-distant past, his father and wife are both killed, along with him and his daughter being injured, because of a terrorist attack. And now, this is when he takes control of his father's company and ramps it up to the next level, including pitching to Homeland Security the idea of putting people that are like National Guard, so, people that only work regular jobs and then get activated when needed, giving them vehicles that could hide in plain sight, and having a paramilitary group inside the U.S., more or less he's pitching masks. They say no, but he still puts up his own money and starts to build his own paramilitary organization that contracts for the government. He starts running guns and that sort of thing, all the sorts of dastardly things that we have come to expect from Miles Mayhem from the cartoon. The difference is the government accepts this. He does business for them with people that they can't. We've seen that type of movie before, too. Wanting almost nothing to do with her father, his daughter goes off to college and becomes an archaeologist. And at college, meets her future husband, Matthew Tracker. His brother, however, has much more in common with her father. He's an electrical engineering genius. And when our two lovebirds discover an ancient mask with some crystals in it that unlock psychic abilities, they need both the help of his brother and her father. The ability of these crystals are amazing and can unlock all sorts of human potential and energy manipulation. And, working together, Miles and his company, along with both Trackers and his daughter, begin the process of creating the masks that will change the world. Around this time they're married and she's pregnant with their son, and this is where things start to work out pretty well. Miles and Matt work together, they're going to do everything above board, until Miles betrays them and decides to sell it to the highest bidder. And this is where the story really ramps up. Matthew Tracker is going out and trying to salvage what he can of these masks, and his brother died in the process, and the U.S. government comes to Matthew and says, hit point blank, we have this proposal that someone else put forward, and we think that your masks are the only way we can go about doing it. Everyone knows it's an open secret that Miles Mayhem is behind the masked villains known as Venom. The government can't prove it. And the government still needs to keep on his good side because they need him to run guns for them. So until they can prove he did something wrong, MASK is not a military organization. MASK is not government funded at all, at least not officially. And although in my pitch Scott Tracker is at best a bit player, I think it's important to have a reason why it is he's there. And part of that is that as Miles' grandson, Miles wouldn't dare target him. In fact, my redo of T-Bob is an AI program prototype that Miles gave Scott to protect him. Saw the early 2000s remake of Knight Rider, you'll know that in that they made a big deal with the fact that the program kit was more impressive than the car kit. And that's what I'm going with T-Bob here. The idea is that the program will be designed to help and guide Scott, but also to protect Scott, and as such can move around to different devices, his cell phone, his watch, his scooter. Instead of it being a transforming thing, it moves from thing to thing via wireless Bluetooth. And to set up the film and to market the film, I would have a set of scenes made that would never appear in the movie itself. So let's talk about marketing. Get a couple actors, dress them up as FBI agents, and have them walk into a crime scene that's some sort of museum. Their boss tells them, not yet, we have to wait for a specialist. They walk around, they see a Corvette pull up, this blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy gets out with this big suitcase in his hand, walks past them and nods, "Good day, gentlemen," and goes in. They look at each other. What sort of specialist is this? Who is this guy? And when they look in the backseat of his car for a second, they see he brought a kid with him. Second video, you have the same thing again. These two guys show up at a crime scene. They're FBI agents. They're told, gotta wait for a specialist. This time when he comes in, they talk about him for a minute. Yeah, I looked him up. His name's Matt Tracker, and that's his son. I have no idea what he does. He's supposed to be an archaeologist. I can't imagine what he does. And this time they listen in as he tells the boss, no, this wasn't them, and walks off. You then do a series of minute and a half long shorts, again, all on YouTube, where you have a guy that works at a school, a guy that works at a pizza place, a guy that works at a pet store, just going about their normal everyday duties, and nothing happens to them, just normal everyday stuff, and get used to the fact that this is our mask team. When the first trailer is cut, it's cut with some of these scenes intermixed with actual movie scenes, and we're introduced to it in the movie through our field agent, Gloria Baker of the FBI. She's on the scene, gets to interact with those two guys that have been in the viral videos, gets explained to her that this guy is some sort of specialist, and she just interrupts and barrels right in. Except this time it's not, no, this wasn't them involved. This was Matt territory. And she ends up tagging along with Matt as a liaison to the FBI as he starts to uncover the crimes and work against Venom. And as such, by the end of it, he's going to recognize that he needs someone like her on the team permanently. This is her origin story. She's a martial arts expert, she's fully trained FBI, and most importantly, she is not just a pretty face, she is not someone's love interest. She is just there to fulfill the same role that a guy would in the FBI. But you know what makes or breaks this movie? The action and the CGI. You need physical effects for all the vehicles. You need them in both ends of the transformation. The transformation itself can be digital, but you need both to be physical, hands-on things you can touch. You need the masks to all have digital components, but overlaid over real physical effects. And most important, you need a lot of action. You need Venom and Mask going at it in war. But enough about build-up. Let's talk about the story I'd run itself. Going back to the roots of the story, I'm going to go to a few other shows that had similar things. The TV show Alias had this guy, Milo Rimbaldi, and he was a Renaissance artist who managed to have all these super science things. Well, that's a great idea to mine, too. Perhaps at some point someone else found out about the ability of these masks and foretold of a time when they would be used again. Add to that the idea of them being hidden in pieces of art around the world. Maybe even instead of doing a Renaissance era, I'd do a Native American or an Aztec prophet, and because of the fact that their stuff all got taken back to the old world as conquest, the pieces are scattered across the world. Now we're on a hunt. Sound familiar? Sound kind of like an Indiana Jones, gonna jump around here and there? Yeah, well, I like Indiana Jones as my parallel here as well. So a mix between the two in a modern day, along with, some Bay-style Transformers action mixed in. So the story starts when Matthew gets put on the case because a piece of art was stolen. The FBI was investigating. Now him and Gloria are working together. He opens up his computer, his phone, whatever we use. Says, computer, what mask agents are best suited for this mission? It pulls up the ones that he was going to use for this. Hondo McClane, tactical and history expert. Bruce Sato, engineering and mechanical expert. Alex Sector, biological and scientific expertise. Our Matt's team at the beginning of the movie, but we'll bring more in as we need more. When he tells the computer he accepts their choices and to assemble the Mobile Armored Strike Command, I really think it would be funny if Gloria asks, so do you spell mask with a C or command with a K. Between using their different expertise and their computers, they figure out what pieces they need to get and where Venom is, and the fact is that Venom's already ahead of them, so they need to activate mask agents in local areas, and that's what will bring in additional mask members. Each piece of the puzzle, each piece of art, will be gotten by Venom, at least initially, but quickly recovered by Mask. And this way we have some quick action sequences, we have the mystery, we have some character development, and the big important part, though, is that Mask wins at the end of the day by getting all of the pieces back and putting them into FBI custody so Miles can't get them. Of course, during all this, the only footage they have are people in masks, and as such, none criminal charges can be brought against any of them, and as such, Venom is still out there working behind the scenes, and as such, Mask still has a job. Matthew offers Gloria a position on the team as a permanent liaison to the FBI, and in doing so gives her her mask with the aura and her vehicle, the Shark. However, the post-credit scene is where things will start to get very interesting and will set up a sequel, because, well, why not just assume that it's going to be a smash success? Venom had their hands on every one of these pieces of art, and their masks have recorders in them, so even though they don't have the physical pieces of art, they have pictures of them now, perfect pictures that were scanned at a certain level, and now they can put together their map and know what they're looking for is. And what they're looking for is the secret to creating more of these masks. Obviously, the script itself would depend on what actors, budget, and stuff like that you had. This is just a basic pitch. However, there are some themes I think that Mask is perfect for. In my rewrite, both Miles and Matthew are defined by their family, and the fact that they are family to each other makes it important. The fact that Scott is family to both of them is important. The idea that they've both chosen their own family, though, Matt with his assembled team that if you look at aren't soldiers, and Miles whose team will be all soldiers and thieves. They've designed their own family, but they still have their family. And that both the first two themes, the family that you have by blood and the family you have by choice, and what happens when you lose the ones you love. And of course, the one that's just so obvious, hiding in plain sight. The map is hiding in plain sight, the heroes are hiding in plain sight, the villains are hiding in plain sight. Everything is there, you just can't see it. After all, illusion is the ultimate weapon. So for now, I need you to like, subscribe, and share this video so that we can grow this community, and then join me back here next time as we take a walk through the heart of the stories we tell. Thanks for watching.
My